Was there ever a time you're thankful the pandemic happened? What was the reason? Those who opted to work from home permanently were pretty much told that if we chose to, we were stuck with it unless there were any special circumstances where we would need to come back in completely. For those of us who need to travel to the office from time to time, they basically have docking stations now where we can plug in our laptop and it turns it into a 3-monitor setup. We are growing extremely fast, and right at the time of being forced to work from home, we were way over capacity in our office. Like, our facilities manager was just throwing desks up against random walls for new hires because our original floor plan couldn't accommodate how many people we had working in the office. It was a good/bad thing for us. The shutdown delayed surgery my dad needed, and that delay might have been part of why the surgery didn't go well when it was completed, though there's no way to know, and we believe the doctors did all they could for someone whose heart had worked very hard for a very long time. But when we did move forward with that operation and things didn't go well, I was able to move home for a month and a half, working remotely with flexible hours, which is not how teaching usually works, of course, to help him and mom, talk to doctors, keep him company, share memories and laughter, and be there on the day my mother had to decide to turn off the machines and say goodbye to the only man she's ever loved. He was her other half since they were 16 years old. It was the hardest and most painful thing I've ever experienced, and I'm so grateful that I got to experience it. Could also be the environment. Some industrial lighting triggers migraines, along with some low-level sound frequencies, etc. It's crazy how many invisible things can have such huge effects on people. I used to be able to tell the day my university turned on the heat or AC for the first time each year because the dust that built up in the systems would make me Yes. It made me slow down and reevaluate what I was doing with my life. I cut out people who were dragging me down, and reconnected with old friends through group Zoom calls. Changed jobs. Started taking care of my body and lost 30 pounds. Found a new hobby. I do wish I made these changes years ago, instead of waiting for a global health crisis to kick my butt into gear. Edit. Thank you to everyone who took the time to read my comment, and to those who responded. Reading all your responses truly made my day. It's reinforced that we're all in this together, even if we're physically apart, doing the best we can. The slowdown was lovely. My husband and I juggled childcare for our special needs kid while working 6 to 7 part-time and gig jobs. We hadn't had more than a few long weekends since 2016. The lockdown happened and we spent 2 glorious weeks together. For the next 2 months, I only worked 2 jobs. We're now back to 4 jobs, but it feels easy comparatively, and our family gets to spend time together. Since we live quite frugally, the stimulus money made up for our lost wages, and continues to subsidize our mortgage. I know it's been hard for a lot of people, but for us it was a big break from the status quo. It's a small thing compared to all the horribleness that happened during the pandemic, but I did feel thankful. My 14-year-old dog tore her CCL the week before everything shut down. The vet said she wasn't a good candidate for surgery because of the risks associated with her age. We didn't know what to do. She couldn't put any weight on it at all. A few days later I lost my job and was staying home all day. I spent a few days researching everything I could about dogs and ligaments, then I got to work. I designed a whole physical therapy routine for my dog and set the plan in motion. And it worked. Within 2 months she was able to walk normally without a limp. Within 4 months she was able to move around like she'd never been injured in the first place. I never would have been able to put in all the time with the physical therapy if I hadn't lost my job, so I can't help but feel a bit thankful. My dog is still around, happy and healthy. She just stole my sock and ran off into the yard. I love that trouble. At the start of 2020, our cat's kidney diseases had progressed to the point that our vet only gave her a few months left. However, I just started a new job that allowed me to work from home, so I got to spend all day with her. By March, both me and my wife were working from home full-time and could give her lots of attention and stay on top of giving her fresh food every few hours, etc. We just said goodbye this week, more than 13 months after she was supposed to have left us. The pandemic is an absolute blessing in many ways for us. We're both convinced that it allowed her to keep going for so long and will always be thankful. I'm not a vet or doctor, so take it with a grain of salt, but here's what I did. My goal was to keep her physically fit, get some blood flowing through that ligament, while also keeping her weight off the ligament. After the tear, I started her on Daysequin to protect the joint and gave her 2 weeks of rest. After that, I bought a sling that attached around her waist. I started taking her for very short walks several times a day. I would have her in that sling, and hold her back legs about an inch off the ground the entire time. Slowly, I started letting her back feet touch the ground, but I was still holding all of her weight through the sling. Her feet would move like she was walking, but I was holding all her weight through the sling. I believe this increased blood flow to the ligament while avoiding damaging it further by her putting weight on it. Over the course of 2 months, I gradually carried less of her weight in the sling, and let her hold more of her own weight while walking. After 2 months, I let her walk without the sling. We kept the walks short and went very slowly. Over time, we went farther and farther and picked up the pace a little. It was about 4 months before she was looking like her old self and walking normally. She gets about 2.5 miles of walking every day, and even goes on hikes out in the mountains again. Honestly, I'm not an expert, and I can't really tell for sure if my rehab program was actually helping. Overall though, she's happy and healthy, so I'm not complaining either way. It made me realize how bad my relationship was. I hate comparing situations, everyone struggles differently, but he didn't talk to me for the first 6 weeks of the lockdown because his stress was worse than mine. He was at his mom's with his brother, having her cook and clean and basically do everything for him while he played games all day. Meanwhile, I had just moved in my own flat, had no bed and very little furniture, no internet, and I was struggling to get hold of groceries, but despite all that he had it worse. I realized that I needed to look after myself. I proposed to my girlfriend on March 20th. She said yes. Lockdown happened the following day, so she moved in with me into a small 2-bedroom apartment. That Wednesday, I got laid off from a job I desperately wanted to quit. Since I got laid off, and didn't quit, I got enhanced unemployment, which basically meant I got a raise. A couple months later, we got married. Due to COVID regulations, we could only have 10 people at the wedding, which kept the guest list small for a very good reason that everyone understood, and kept our wedding expenses very low. Getting married allowed me to get on my wife's insurance, which was much less expensive than getting it on my own. A little over a month later, I started a job related to pandemic response, which paid very well. I made more during the second half of 2020 than in all of 2019. This income allowed me to save up enough to put a decent down payment on a house, with historically low interest rates. In December, I got another, more stable, job, which required me to work from home. This job pays about the same as the one I had before the pandemic, and it's for a much better company with many more opportunities for advancement. TLDR, before, single, renting, in debt. After, married, homeowner, with comfortable nest egg. I got to meet my best friend. He once replied to a post or something and asked if we wanted to play some games together. He was living in the US while I was in Germany, but our schedules worked really well together and we got to spend a lot of time together. Over time he and I each introduced some other friends and played different games, and now we've formed our own friend group. He just recently moved back to Finland and now we play a little less together, but I'm really glad to have met him. We are also planning to meet up sometime this or next year with the other guys from our group, since we only know each other from gaming together. I know it will be buried, but I really wanted to tell this somewhere, so here we go. I am very anxious, most probably have social anxiety, but I didn't go to a doctor for a diagnosis. Anyway, in the autumn of 2020 I started high school, and none of my previous classmates were in my class. At the beginning, I had to go physically to school, and, even if just half the class was present, we were split in two halves and one group went to school and the other took online classes, switching every week. I would come home exhausted. It was a lot of social interaction and new people, so a lot of anxiety, and it was too much. Luckily, I only went for 3 weeks until the COVID situation got worse and we switched to full online. This helped a lot by taking away anxiety-inducing factors like how I look, how I speak and things like that. Also, the interactions, both with teachers and classmates on Discord, didn't feel so direct, so they produced less anxiety. It was also easier to be in a conversation but not saying anything online than physical. One day, a group that formed added me on their Discord, which only contained about 15 people of my class, because they needed one more player in an Among Us game and knew I was a nice guy, probably because I also shared me homework with people from there a few times. Since then I started to enter their calls and slowly relax around them. After a few months, I could finally feel comfortable around them, and I actually felt like, hey, I actually made some friends. I also went out with them outside a few times, while we weren't in quarantine, which helped me develop even more. Overall, the quarantine and spending time online allowed me to take everything slower and gave me time to feel comfortable around these new people and in these new situations. And here I am now, with only 1 week of school left, as a totally different person than I was 9 months before. I made friends, I grew more social, I kinda discovered my clothing taste. I am still in the process of figuring this out, but I am getting somewhere, and I grew my self-esteem. Sure, COVID wasn't the only thing that helped me achieve this. It took a lot of effort, motivation, hope and support from my sister, but I can't deny that little things like spending time online rather than physical, or a silly game like Among Us helped me start my growing process. So many times. Before the pandemic I constantly called in sick at work due to a metabolic disorder I have, as well as some mental struggles. Once we started working from home, I was able to start dealing with my health problems much better, so I haven't had to call in sick at all. Also, I have started a few new hobbies during the pandemic, playing the violin and singing, and I now have a new job. That's a lot better than the job I had at the start of the pandemic. Lastly, I have been able to reconnect with some friends I hadn't really been in touch with before the pandemic. So, overall this pandemic has actually been good to me. I've been dealing with a pretty bad anxiety disorder the past few years, started right before the pandemic. A year of lockdown has had its own difficulties, but not having to go to events or leave my house much was helpful. My husband lost some of his work, so he was able to be home more to help out with the kids and house. I was able to pursue counseling and medical care with his help. We were a homeschool family already, but when the neighborhood parents let their kids take the rest of the year off during the first round of lockdowns, we followed suit. That big break was really healing for our family and allowed us to re-examine our approach to education at home, which led to us finding a really great school rhythm and flow. We're thriving now as a family. I'm seeing a therapist and she's helping me reintroduce myself to the outside. I'm honestly really nervous now that things are opening up again, and it's scary out there. Oh well. I've been able to understand my newly diagnosed AD/ASD son and what his challenges are with regards to school so much better than I understood it when he was in school full-time. I never wanted to homeschool my kids, but doing online school for the last school year has been informative. I think it's going to help me advocate for him so much better than if we hadn't had this experience. It's also been completely out of the norm and interesting to have our whole family home, husband working from home, kids homeschooling, and have no outside family demands on us due to isolation protocols. It hasn't been a 100% great experience, but it has been an experience. My company, along with many others, are now offering flexible work arrangements where people have total freedom to WFH, the office, or a hybrid of the two. WFH has been incredible. I have so much extra time and mental energy without commuting, on top of not getting sick, eating healthier, and drinking less because no more happy hours. This never would have happened without the pandemic, and I can only hope it eases the burden on transportation infrastructure, pollution, stress, etc. I'm interviewing for a remote role, and in the before times I probably would have had to fly out for a week. Now I can do it comfortably from my home. As an autistic person, I was grateful that I, ironically, didn't have to mask and spend all day wasting energy pretending to be neurotypical in order to be accepted by my colleagues. Working from home, I could let myself relax without worrying about being judged for behaviors I can't necessarily control. In a way, when the masks went on, my mask got to come off. I forgot how exhausting it is to suppress all your natural coping mechanisms for 8 hours a day 7 days a week. Edit. I will add that my job is now bringing us back into the office full-time with no consideration of working from home arrangements. I am absolutely terrified of going back to it, honestly. I'm a fan of working from home, I won't lie about that. I've been able to build an exercise regime, not rush to finish work, not be annoyed when I finish late and then have to sit in traffic for an hour. Not panic when I wake up late. My mental health has recovered greatly and it's just nice. My job is now a means to an end, not a priority. Managed to cut a lot of toxic people out of my life. Oh, and I can stream shows whilst I work, which has actually boosted my productivity. Listen to music all I want, work in my boxers only. No one watching over my shoulder. Life is... Almost every day I am thankful it happened. Going in, I was in a job, construction trades, that I didn't even know was killing me. I was up at 4 a.m. every day, when there was work, miserable all day, at work, and then too tired to properly engage with my family once I got home. Then, when there wasn't work, I'd be even grumpier as I'd be worried about how to pay bills and where my next check was coming from. Got laid off in April and was really down for almost a month. I started doing some projects around the house, built a garden, built a PC, fixed some stuff, etc., and spending more quality time with my wife and kids. I feel like I've really gotten to know these wonderful little people so much better than I would have otherwise, and they don't have to see dad coming home grumpy from work anymore. A couple of months into the pandemic, I found a job with a small service company, in my trade, and started using skills I hadn't used in years as I had worked myself into a supervisor role at my old job and was mostly off the tools. I found that I love fixing things and my trade is really where it's at for me work-wise. Recently I took a new job that pays better and has more benefits and stability than my old service job. I'm doing plant maintenance now and there is potential for me to get a second trade ticket. I'm already a master electrician and new job wants to indenture me as a millwright. I love learning new skills and the crew at the new job are really fun guys to work with. Also, my children are so excited as dad's new job is at an ice cream plant. Throughout all of this I have gotten to be closer with my wife than ever before and we really enjoy our special times together after the kids are in bed and we can just relax. I know the pandemic is a horrible thing that happened, but my wife and I wouldn't trade the last year and a half for anything in the world. My mother got a divorce about a year before the pandemic. My terrible father got most of the retirement fund but she get the house and everything physical. At the time she was happy to pay him to leave but she was very cash strapped. When the pandemic hit, she get on unemployment with all the pay bumps. Combined with the stimulus checks and her ability to budget, her savings were refilling fast. After 4 months of unemployment, the hospital she worked at let her go with something like 9-month severance package since she had been there over 30 years. She now has about all the money back that her ex got in the divorce, and it seems every few weeks she gets another check in the mail for something. She is now retired and very comfortable. I called it karma for dealing with a bipolar nut job for 38 years of marriage.